there any events in the books that were the book that was based off like my real life experiences? No. I know what it's like to be TJ, to move away from home, and to be having a life that's different and away from your family, and to have to sort of bridge that. But I didn't know anyone in the military. I've never lost anyone like that. I've lost people in my family, but they were to like illness. It wasn't that kind of a sudden event. I've obviously taken a road trip. I know what that's like, but I didn't really know a lot of the little details of the story. So I had to do a lot of research. I had to read a lot on the military life and how personal effects get delivered. It was really, really hard to find out physically how they bring those trunks of personal effects home. Because you can't, or at least I won't, I'm not insensitive enough, you can't call up somebody who has lost their son and said, I'm very sorry you've lost your son, but could I ask, when they delivered the personal effects, were they in a trunk or a box? I mean, you can't ask those questions to people who would know because they're grieving and it's not fair. So you have to find new ways to find the research. You've got to find blog posts or newspaper articles that might talk about those kinds of details to make sure you get them right. And it was a really good lesson for me that sometimes research is how you ask the question. I had a hard time finding out those kinds of questions because I realized that anyone writing about that stuff wouldn't write soldiers' personal effects. They'd write sons' personal effects. And once I Googled sons' personal effects, I found lots of information. So it was a really good lesson for me that when you're looking for something, you have to remember that human beings write the stuff down. So you have to think about what kind of questions they'd be asking themselves.
You say you started with the second chapter where he's in the office after a fight. You could have gone with many approaches during the whole story of what Matt's problem is. So why did you choose that his brother died in the military?
I don't know. I mean, the way I write is to start with a character and a little bit of an idea to see where it goes. And sometimes it goes off in wrong directions and I think, I don't want to write about this, and I come back and I take it a different direction. But for Matt, it felt really important to write about. There weren't that many stories out there about a kid who'd lost his sibling. Certainly not with Don't Ask, Don't Tell as an aspect either. And those are important things I thought should be written about. But really, I think, if Matt drove the story, what did Matt want? And what was hurting him? And I try very hard not to judge my characters. So I let them do and say the things they would naturally do and say.
So when we talked about Matt, after we had almost finished, we talked about, I asked the kids, how many of you liked Matt at the beginning? Or how many of you didn't like Matt at the beginning? Raise your hands. How many of you, how many of you did not like Matt at the beginning? We had a lot of hands up. And then I said, how many of you liked Matt at the end? And just about everybody agreed, that there'd been this appreciation of him as a person and a character. In your mind, what was it that made him become likable?
Well, it'd be interesting for me to hear what readers think, but I think it's about understanding why. Empathy. I think it always comes back to empathy. You can not like what someone does, but if you can understand why they do it might make you not like their actions, but not like them. And I think for Matt, it's interesting. I told you the book started with, it felt good to hit someone. I can't say that out loud, but it's the truth. And Matt in the office after the fight. We actually added the first chapter because my editor had some concerns that if we started after the fight, too many people would be like, oh my God, I don't want to read a whole book about a jerk. And would never read on. But we thought if we could get you to see a little bit of Matt before the fight, and especially how much Shauna likes him. And Shauna's a good person, and she likes him, and she's worried about him, and he's in pain. That maybe you'd stick with him despite this really awful things he does. And I think that's important. I think you start to learn and feel sorry for Matt and be worried for him. And as soon as you can have a little empathy of how somebody's feeling, it changes how you feel about them. It's interesting because I think some people wish I had shown more of Pincher. Why does Pincher act the way he does? And that would be a different book. But I think it was important to show, I mean, Matt's angry. A lot of times people tell you not to be angry or not to be upset about something, and it's really unfair. What they mean is, your being upset is making me uncomfortable, and it's not fair. Matt should be allowed to be upset. He should be allowed to be angry. And I hoped that through the book, he would start to understand that, and that readers would start to feel, you know, it's really too bad people won't just let him grieve his brother, because maybe none of this would have happened. If Matt's father was the kind who could talk about things, Matt never would have beat up Pincher. But he's living in a home that doesn't let him acknowledge he's angry, and that's really hard. When you're that upset, you can't hold that in. So you have to find ways to deal with it that are maybe better than beating someone up. But it's okay to be angry. And I thought it was important to show that. Curtis is angry too. And, he's how much older than Matt. And, that's what happens when you lose someone you love and you're upset. So it was important for me to take that path with the reader, and I'm really happy that for you all, it went from something where you didn't really like him to you started to understand where he's coming from.
Was there a reason that you picked Madison for like the location of the plot?
I think probably because I had moved here in 2004. I used to live in Virginia. I grew up in New Jersey, and Madison was still new to me. So it felt like I was just starting to get to know it. So it was easy for me to write about Madison as someone who's new to it. There's actually a lot of scenes I wrote of Madison that didn't make it into the final book that are all about how they tear up the roads and put up signs and then go away and leave the big holes in the roads. Because as someone new to Madison, I found that strange. So I think it's because I was somewhat new to Madison too, that it felt like somewhere I was exploring and that I could still be a little lost in.
Do you feel like when you finished the book that you didn't tie up enough for some of the characters, like you didn't really get to finish what happens to Pincher, or if you ever find out about Pincher? Do you think that somewhere there might be sequels for Role Effects or like a companion novel?
I don't. I like taking a snapshot of someone's life in a book. You get this little moment for them, and then you have to sort of imagine what might happen. But I never say never. I'd be much more likely to explore Harley than I would Pincher, because she's more interesting to me. But I'll never say never. I might write a short story in the same world. Maybe that's when I'll deal with Pincher. But for me, I solved the question I had going in of why Matt was so angry. So I solved that for myself. So I feel like the book is done. But I get the question a lot, so who knows? Maybe sometime in the future someone will talk me into it.
What character did you enjoy writing about the most? Like,
What character did I enjoy writing about the most? I loved writing Curtis. I really enjoyed Curtis. That combination of, he's really confident, and he's hurt, but he's also still open to the world. I loved writing him. I thought he was a lot of fun. I liked Shauna. There were lots of bits of Shauna that didn't make it onto the page because we're focused on Matt. And I sometimes wonder if maybe we should put little bits of her in. I actually had a character I took out of the book I wish I'd left in. There was this really mean secretary in the office scene that I loved. She was a little sort of troll-like woman with blue hair that you could only barely see over the counters, and she was really, really mean to Matt. But she was fun to write. But ultimately, we didn't need her, so we cut her out.
I think my kids are probably surprised you haven't sworn yet.
Well,
Can you talk about the swear
I
words?
don't curse quite as much as Matt does. I get the question a lot of why I have the swear words in the book. And the reality is, would you have bought it? Would you have bought for 1 minute this book if Matt was saying, "Oh gosh, golly darn, I'm so upset. Oh, fudge buckets, you're a really mean person." I mean,
not grown up in a household that censors what he says. And I needed to let him be who he is, and he curses. In my current book, the one that I'm working on right now with my editor, there's very few curse words at all, because that character doesn't curse. Her parents wouldn't allow her to, and it's not been the kind of world she grows up in, so she doesn't curse. But I'm a really big believer in you have to let your characters be who they are, even when you don't like who they are, because otherwise the story's not real. Even fiction has to be real. It doesn't have to be true, but it has to be real. If you're reading it and you're thinking, oh, the kid wouldn't say that, you're going to lose interest in the story. So my goal is for you to read the story and be sucked into it. And so I have to be true to who my characters are, even when I don't like them very much. And sometimes Matt's hard to like, but, you know, curse words don't bother me. They really, really don't. I don't understand why people get so upset about curse words. We do some really bad things in this world to each other. We do really bad. You hear way worse things in the hallway than curse words. I'd be happy if every bully stopped bullying and just cursed up a storm every day. It would hurt a lot less people. I mean, seriously, if every person who tormented somebody in school just cursed nonstop, you'd get used to it, and it would not hurt anybody. But we obsess about cursing, and I've never understood why. There are much more hurtful words than shit or fuck. There are.
Do you have any questions for our readers?
What didn't you like about the book? What do you wish I had done differently? Trust me, people have written really bad things. I won't get hurt.
The only thing is sometimes when Mrs. McMahon was reading aloud, we got confused with who was talking.
I think that was
That's
more
about it.
my part.
No, it is very hard. I have trouble reading certain scenes because I don't use dialogue tags that much. And actually, I'm kind of proud of myself because when you read it, you understand who is who. But when you try to read it aloud, it's really hard. My best tip for when you're reading a book like that is to listen to the audiobook. The audiobook for Personal Effects, the guy who does it is a real voice actor. And you can tell all the characters apart. He's really terrific. Maybe you can play them a little bit of it next week.
You bet. I have it on tape.
And you can actually understand who's who.
It's
really great.
The same guy who does Knife of Never Letting Go on
Yes.
audio.
Nick Liddell.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. So like his voice for Shauna and his voice for Matt and his voice for the dad are all totally different. And it's really kind of fun. I love the entrance of Matt's dad. It's great to hear it.
Please pardon the interruption. We have one last announcement today.
Hi, we just wanted to say that there's a bake sale in front of the Commons until the end of the school day, so come and get your goodies.
Very, very important announcements.
That's right.
What else? Anything else that you didn't like? Well, if you think of them, feel free to Mrs. McMahon has my email, you can pass them along, because I'm always wanting to learn. This was my first book, and I read every review of it, everywhere, because I want to learn what I didn't do right, so I can do better next time.
I think you should have included more about Shauna's home life.
Yeah.
It was kind of vague on what she was like, except when she was with,
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that from other reviewers too. Yeah. You learn. You never stop learning. If you want to be good at something, you have to be willing to be told you did something not quite right, and to learn from it. And I've learned from this book the things I didn't do right. So hopefully I'll do them better next time.
On behalf of our class,
We have
And
a
Mrs.
small
Steiner.
token of our appreciation for coming, just
Thank you.
a few things that represent Baraboo. So we wanted to give that to you and say thank you so much for giving us this time.
yes, let's give her a hand, folks.